But I'm Lauren Nye. I'm president of Kennesaw PRSSA. So happy to have our guest speakers here today, April Phillips and Nicole Williams. So just super excited. This is going to be an awesome meeting, and I don't see any reason to beat around the bush. Let's just get into it. So let's go April and then Nicole, just for order of questions, and let's just go ahead and please introduce yourselves and your current roles and your backgrounds, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Well, hi, I'm very excited to be here. I am April Phillips, APR. I am the National Marketing and Communications Planning Director for the American Red Cross Biomedical Services. I celebrated 15 years with the Red Cross last year. I started as a regional communications manager and kind of worked my way up to this national position. So if you have heard that if you've ever heard that there's a blood shortage, that comes from my team. If you have a t-shirt at your college blood drive, that's something my team develops, whether it's specific to your college or a big national partnership or promotion. So really our primary aim with my team is to manage a 12-month calendar of integrated marketing communications initiatives, including national partnerships that try to drive blood and platelet donation. So that is where I spend all day, every day. Before the Red Cross, I was a communications marketing fund development coordinator at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and before that I was marketing communications coordinator for an association for environmental toxicologists and chemists. And we also published books in peer-reviewed journals. So I have a little bit of experience in the nonprofit publishing world as well. So that's me.
Awesome. No, you've got a wide range of experience over on that end. That's awesome. All right, Nicole, how about you?
Sure. So I'm Nicole Williams. I am a senior public relation manager at World Vision. We are the world's largest Christian humanitarian organization. We operate in over 100 countries, and basically we lift families out of poverty. And we can do that in a range of ways. It could be anything from healthcare programs to livelihood programs, teaching people skills to get jobs. It could also be education programs, working with children. We are a child-focused agency, so basically really all of our programs have an angle and a focus on children. And so we're, again, operating in over 100 countries around the world. And we actually work here in the US as well with our US programs. And basically that consists of helping out during times of disaster. So pretty much like American Red Cross, we're some of the first responders for natural disasters and storms here in the US, providing, gifts in kind, or basically, storm relief products that we put in market. And in addition to that, in the US, we work with schools and basically helping teachers with school supplies. So that's pretty cool as well. Before World Vision, I was with CARE, which is Atlanta-based, and it's also a humanitarian organization. Their focus was women and girls. So similar kind of missions and philosophies, helping to lift people out of poverty, but CARE did it through women and girls, and World Vision does it through children. So prior to that, prior to being at CARE, I was at Porter Novelli, which, as you guys know, is a global communications firm. And before that, I was on the reporting side. I was a reporter for Wall Street Journal, as well as Business Week magazine, and I think the Newark Star Ledger. So publications, actually, the Star Ledger doesn't even exist anymore. So, but, just a really hefty dose of kind of print journalism in my background and business journalism. So if they sent me to cover a fire, there would be a problem, because I always focused on, what's the bottom line and how does this impact dollars and cents. So just really happy to be here with you guys, and excited that you are interested in nonprofit PR. I think there's just a range of possibilities, and I'm sure April and I can kind of walk you through, what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you all so much. Awesome. Yeah. So going straight into that, Nicole, with, walking us through it. Let's jump into the next question. So we'll go April and Nicole in that order. And the question is, what does the day-to-day look like when working at a nonprofit organization as a PR professional? So
I'll tell you, I'll myth bust you, first of all. I know a lot of people enter PR. I've heard this so many times. I got into PR so I don't have to know the numbers. You need to know the numbers. So I spend a borderline obscene amount of my day reviewing data, trying to determine like what are our donor trends looking like, what for us, biomedical services is basically the blood donation arm of the Red Cross, no pun intended. And we are basically a nonprofit pharmaceutical company. We're regulated by the FDA, but we're also a 501c3. So we rely on the generosity of donors in order to meet the needs of every person who needs at a hospital gets it from a volunteer donor, whether it's the Red Cross or someone else that they're donating with. So we look at our inventory to find out, what are our projections for the next 6 months based on what we're collecting, how many blood drives we have on the calendar. So there's a lot of looking at that, because that's going to help shape our PR strategies for the next, 2 weeks to 6 months. So a lot of time in the data, also looking at our analytics for our PR performance, both from a social standpoint, a media clip standpoint. I do a lot of strategizing these days. So I actually get nervous if someone were to ask me to write a news release. I might actually have some problems with that because I'm looking at like the whole forest these days. But it's really amazing to be able to do that, because my team is building those really solid PR tactics to help support our overarching strategy. And it's pretty amazing when you see those things execute and you start seeing blood donation appointments increase and you start seeing our inventory increase. So there's a lot of strategizing, a lot of meetings with cross-functional teams. Just today, I've met with our medical office, our quality affairs team, our entire biomedical services marketing team, our call center, met with our national communications team. So there's a lot of cross-functional work being done on a day-to-day basis. Our manufacturing team, I was on a call with them earlier today because we're working on something that has some donor implications within our manufacturing, which is where all of the blood goes after it's donated. We break it into the different components. So it's a really, really broad spectrum of things that we touch in PR. Everything from public health initiatives to the more kind of regulated things to the fun partnerships. I mean, we have a partnership coming up with peanuts, like Charlie Brown peanuts. So it's really cool to be able to work on that wide variety of content and topics and strategies, all with the ultimate goal of making sure that patients get the blood they need. So
absolutely awesome. Wow, that's sounds like no day is the same.
Yes.
Wow, that's fantastic. All right, so Nicole, what does your day-to-day look like at World Vision?
Yeah, I would say the same, that there's no day the same. I'm more on the front lines of handling media requests. So in my role as Senior Public Relations Manager, I handle what we call our HEA media. HEA stands for Humanitarian Emergency Affairs Media. So right now you might have heard about the horrible earthquake in Syria and Turkey. So since Sunday of last week, when the earthquake hit, it was early Monday morning, their time. Basically, I've been fielding media requests, talking to our folks on the ground. What are we seeing? How many people are we helping? What is the concern of unaccompanied children in an earthquake situation like this? And so basically it's you're fielding requests, you're coming up with pitches to get interest from reporters and producers. You could be doing anything from getting those press releases out that April talked about. Thankfully, I don't have to write them anymore either. But just kind of getting those out the door and then fine-tuning a pitch from everyone to, your local newspaper, your local outlets, to national NBC News. So it varies, and it's always something new and different. We also manage our influencer relationships and out of our team. And those are, your social media folks, celebrities that kind of lend their support to our organization. And so that sometimes is a lot of honestly, being a secretary, like, okay, when can I get you to do this interview, ma'am? And, it's okay, I have to pay for your makeup. Great, no problem. I mean, it's a lot of that kind of hand holding and everything from A to Z in terms of managing those relationships. I would say, like April mentioned, you do have to know the data. You do have to know what it is that you're pitching, and you have to know it intimately so that you can express that and share that with reporters and producers. So yeah, definitely no day is the same. And in our line of work, because we are responding to emergencies all around the world, you really just have to be kind of, well versed. I'm probably reading 4 or 5 news sites in the morning before 9 a.m., just kind of catching up what's happening where, I'm always scanning the world news editions, and just really trying to make sure that I'm on top of what's going on. We have dozens of team chats from folks all around the world, Middle East and Africa units, Asia units, just wherever like the hotspots are that are happening. We have a team chat for it. And, myself and my other counterparts around the world are just kind of going through the news of the day. How can we get into this story? How can we make sure that we're elevating World Vision's presence in the media? I mean, that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah, and if I could tack onto that too, along those same lines, because we are first and foremost a humanitarian organization. We respond to disasters. I'm sure World Vision and CARE, I know for a fact, I've worked disasters where there were CARE volunteers who we were partnering with on the ground as well. And it's so important to know all the different, there's disaster Red Cross, there's biomedical services, there's international services, we have service to the armed forces, we have 5 different lines of service, including our training. And it's important to know all of the news is affecting those other parts of the organization as well, because you don't want to compete against yourself. Exactly. And you want to know, to your point, Nicole, how can we become part of this story in a way that is authentic and doesn't feel like we're inserting ourselves into it, but we're providing a helpful resource to the people who may need our services.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Wow. So it sounds like, y'all really have to stay, in tune with everything going on so that your organization can maintain relevancy if there is any, like you're saying, you don't want to insert yourself where it's not appropriate. But wow, and then you've got to like stay on your toes too. I mean, it sounds like things move pretty quick when you're dealing with emergencies. So I want to go off script for a second here, since y'all have been, talking about more, emergency frontline kind of work. How does that differ from time when it's tame, besides probably the stress? How does it differ?
I can go first. I mean, you just have less time for the strategizing. Yeah. So you kind of have to have a playbook where you could just go by memory of, okay, this is what I'm doing. This tactic I'm using here. This tactic I'm using over here. So that you don't have time to sit back and think of, what's the big picture strategy kind of thing. So it's important to kind of have that stuff in place. I'm trying to think of other things that are different. You get more time when you're not in an emergency mode, or what we call HEA mode. When you're not in emergency mode, you get more time to like develop relationships throughout the organization. To figure out how you can help other channels, figure out how you can, how you can work together seamlessly. So yeah, you have more time to kind of think through things when you're not in emergency mode.
Yeah. We call ours gray skies, blue skies. So gray skies is when you're actively responding either to a disaster, or for us, if there's a blood shortage in my line of service. And I have to say, we are seeing less and less blue skies, especially from a disaster response standpoint. We just launched a big climate change initiative because, the climate is changing regardless of what you think the cause is. And it's affecting people. And as Nicole said, it's really during a disaster, it's your basic crisis response, crisis communications 101. You are looking at making sure your people are taken care of. You're looking at making sure your volunteers and your clients are taken care of. And you're really in response mode. There is not a lot of time to say, oh, let's try to plan for this story in a week. It is fielding. So, I mean, when COVID happened, we saw a huge cancellation of blood drives across the country. I mean, we lost like 65% of our blood drives in 48 hours. It was insane. And we were responding, I mean, I would say for a good week or two, most of my day, and I'm not even actively pitching, most of my day was spent media response, doing interviews, helping prepare responses. It's making sure that things fit within a bigger strategy if you have time, but really it's making sure people have what they need, making sure that your people are taken care of, making sure that you are forcing people to take breaks, because when you are tired, you make mistakes. So it's making sure that your team members are taken care of as well, and that they are cognizant of their mental health and what their own limitations might be. But it's energizing. I kind of like that challenge. I like that side of PR, but it's exhausting. So when we're in blue skies, which doesn't happen all the time, but that's when we get to plan the fun things like Peanuts partnerships and partnerships with entertainment, movies and TV shows, and really look at the longer term, what's going to help these challenges that we're seeing in the long run, versus when you're responding to a crisis, it really is, okay, let's put that on the back burner for a moment and shift our resources over here.
And I would say too that the stakes are so much higher during those crisis moments, right? Because really what we're doing, we're on the front lines telling people about how they can help, and how they help determines how we're able to help.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like if we don't get the funds, if I'm not on ABC News tonight telling David Muir what's happening, I may not get the money, to be able to help and feed into the response. Similarly for April, she may not get the drive, the folks that'll come to the blood drive. So it's key. I mean, it's one of those instances where PR really drives the bottom line.
Well, and it also helps drive public opinion as well. We've had disasters that we've responded to. I'll use the flooding in California several years ago. There was this one shot that everyone used of a parking garage, and the parking garage had collapsed, and there were like 8 cars in the garage, and the media latched onto that. And in public opinion, there were a lot of, oh gosh, so much social commentary going, oh, of course, people in California, number one, don't need our help. They're showing a parking deck. Great, people's cars were destroyed. There's starving children across the country. So we had the responsibility of making sure that we're showing the true impacts that's having on people, because those immediate images coming out from media were not accurately reflecting the gravity of what people were experiencing. So that's where us as PR professionals, we have to be storytellers. We have to be able to find the people who, number one, are willing to share their story during what is most likely one of the most difficult times of their entire life, and to make sure that the public understands how people are being impacted. But more than that, make sure that the public understands how they can be empowered to make a difference without ever leaving their home.
Yes.
Wow. I honestly, I'm kind of like lost for words. It's not something that I'm, faced with often, but wow, I don't know. I'm kind of looking to everyone else in the room who's talking about maybe wanting to go into nonprofit PR, and it just, wow, that really tugs at your heartstrings. Knowing just how impactful y'all do. Like Nicole, I believe you said it. PR drives the bottom line, and April, it can reflect the gravity of situations that maybe isn't told initially, in a correct manner. So, wow, that really hit me. Okay, all right. Gonna go on to the next question here. Okay, so what opportunities has working in the nonprofit sector brought to you? personally. So,
For me,
yeah, go ahead, April.
it's brought so much, so many different experiences. When I started off in nonprofit, I was a generalist. It was you do a little bit of all of it. I was marketing, fund development, graphic design, public relations. We didn't have social media back then, because I've been doing this for 20 years now. So social media did not exist. But website maintenance, you did so many things. I was fortunate that when I came to the Red Cross and I interviewed, 5 years into my career, our division marketing director was like, well, April, all you're going to be doing here is PR. And I was like, thank you. I've been waiting for this moment. But I've really had I've been very fortunate to have so many different experiences, both within the types of nonprofits that I have worked for. And since coming to the Red Cross, I work in biomed, but I'm also part of our public affairs team. So I've been able to get exposure to those disasters. I've been deployed to support disasters throughout the Southeast. So there's just been a really wide breadth of experience that I've had that I don't think that I would have gotten had I started with an agency or in the corporate sector. So, and that's been really rewarding for me. I enjoy challenges. I enjoy change with the nonprofit sector. I mean, a lot of industries are like this, but with the nonprofits, you have to be very nimble and adaptable to change. And from the economic crisis of 2008 to healthcare changes over the years, it's been kind of a different world every few years, from an emerging technology, from social media, from transitioning away from sending fax news releases, to being able to, ping someone on Instagram and say, hey, I got a story idea for you. So it's been just really fun. And I've continued to have those challenges and continued to see enough change that keeps me interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole, how about you?
Yeah. So bar none, the biggest and best experience that it has afforded me is international travel. I've been to like 8 African countries, been to a couple of Latin American countries in Europe. I mean, it's just because of what CARE and World Vision does, it's such a focus on international development. I've been able to, to really see our work in action. You have to be able to see it to tell somebody else about it. So that has been the biggest opportunity. But also I would say, in working with World Vision, because we're a Christian humanitarian organization, it allows me to live my faith. And that's a huge thing of it. And I think a lot of times people will say, particularly, if you're working for a nonprofit, you're doing work that has meaning, and for me, it means that and more at World Vision, because I'm able to, to express my faith. And it's such a big part of World Vision. Like, it freaked me out when I first got here. I'm like, we're going to pray doing what? Like, what's happening? We're going to have a prayer meeting? Okay, no problem. Like, y'all are going to pay me to pray? Okay. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just such a, it just means so much that you're able to help others and kind of really lean into that really means a lot.
Well, that's wonderful. It sounds like it's a very rewarding industry to be in, especially with the companies that you both are with. Wow. Okay, awesome. Okay, so I know we've talked a lot about, crisis situations, but the opportunities, it sounds like, have been incredible for the both of you. But when it comes to like emergencies and the harder stuff, like what are the greatest challenges that you've faced working in the nonprofit sector? I know you may have to think on that one, but
I'm sitting here thinking, like, where do I start? Nicole,
great.
First, or do you want me to start running down my list?
Just whatever comes to top of mind.
In the nonprofit sector, you are, at least for the Red Cross, and I'll speak on behalf of kind of where I am with the Red Cross, We have been very much impacted by changes to the economy and changes to just how people, oh, lights went off. Y'all need to move in the room.
Yeah,
Someone
we have motion censored lights so for like
y'all are
hour.
y'all are too still in the room.
I know, we're so intrigued. We're like,
Yeah.
can't move. So excited. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so the economy, I think because we do depend on people to donate funds to help keep us running. When the economy is in a down slump, we definitely feel it really, really hard. I will say that during COVID, you know, large philanthropic opportunities did present themselves more from corporations. But initially, there were a lot of people who were like, I was laid off. I can't donate like I used to. Likewise, from a volunteer standpoint, you know, something like COVID affects people's ability to volunteer or willingness to volunteer. So we are definitely greatly impacted by things that are happening out and about in the world. Over the years, too, you've had people's motivations are changing. The way people interact has shifted from primarily in real life to, you know, I mean, I think I know two people's phone numbers, my mom's and my boyfriend's. I don't know anyone else's phone numbers because it's in my phone or I connect with them on Messenger. So just the way that we communicate has changed. And while that has an effect for corporations, there's something about having a mission-driven purpose that makes it feel far more urgent to make sure that you continue to keep those volunteers engaged, that you continue to be able to communicate with your volunteers and your financial or your blood donors in ways that are meaningful and in ways that are going to get them to show up.
Yeah. I would say that some of the bigger challenges are challenges across the board, right? That nonprofits and for-profit organizations would find alike. One of them being just the sheer amount of messages that are out there and so many organizations that you're competing with. Like there's so much clutter and there's so much noise and there's so many, and it's constant. It's like the news cycle is 24 hours. I mean, it's constant. So like trying to make sure that you set yourself apart, that you are constantly kind of raising the profile of your organization. I mean, those challenges you're going to face whether you're at nonprofit or for-profit. But I do think that those are things that you have to be prepared for as a communicator. You know, like April said, you know, we're storytellers, but there's a lot of stories out there. And what's going to make your story, you know, kind of resonate with people, you know, because that's really what we're doing. So I would say that. I would also say, yeah, the donor trend thing is huge. You know, we actually saw the opposite with COVID. I think because, you know, it happened so many places around the world. I think Americans for the first time saw how susceptible we are, you know, to such, you know, kind of strong market changes that can happen because they were seeing it for the first time. Like they were, it was one of those things where we were all in the same boat. The boats might be a different size, but, you know, everybody was kind of feeling the same thing at once. And so that helped American donors to be more empathetic. And it showed up in the money. Like they were, you know, they gave more, to be honest with you. I mean, last year we started, this past year, we started seeing that kind of decline a little. But right in the height of COVID, people were actually giving more to our international development causes. So, but yeah, that's definitely a challenge. And I think too, just your amount of resources. I mean, World Vision is, again, the world's largest Christian humanitarian organization. We're $1 billion organization. So we do have a lot of resources. When I was at CARE, we were half the size of World Vision. So, you know, you saw things that, you know, like, oh man, we got to really figure out how we can do this without spending money because we didn't have. So yeah, I would say those things are top challenges.
I'm going to echo that coming from small nonprofits to the Red Cross. Small nonprofit, I remember I had a major fundraising event when I worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters. And when I was hired on, I asked not only what is the budget for this event, but what is my communications and PR budget? And I worked there for almost 2 years, I think, and I never was told what my budget was. It was just a ask me if you need something, because I had no budget. So coming to an organization like the Red Cross, when I started with the Red Cross, we had 21,000 paid employees across the country. We are a $3 billion organization. It may actually be more now, because we do have such a huge breadth of support we provide for so many different things. And it was kind of nice being able to come in and, you know, I'm reminded there's this guy, Dan Pilata, who is controversial in the nonprofit sector, but I remember watching one of his TED Talks or something a few years ago, and he was talking about how scrutinized nonprofits are for spending money when that expense can actually help you bring in more financial donors or help you bring in more volunteers. And, you know, I remember here thinking about Big Brothers Big Sisters whenever, and actually it was I was at a session at the Georgia Center for Nonprofits too, that was kind of talking about something similar, about how there was this experiment done where they set up, you had this organization, and small nonprofits have like a hodgepodge of furniture. You get donated furniture, and so this office looks this way, that office looks another way. You make it work. And they wanted to upgrade their furniture, and the board and everyone else wouldn't approve it. So they actually had like some consultants come in. I think it was obviously not a paid consultant, had to have been a free consultant. They're like, nah, you need to invest in furniture, and I promise you things will improve. So they invested in furniture and ended up seeing their donations skyrocket, because it gave them more credibility, and people saw that they were like, they took it seriously. So I think that there's definitely something to be said for nonprofits who do respect you as employees and want to make sure that they are paying you appropriately, but also investing in the organization so that we can fulfill our mission in the best way possible. Those dollars spent are spent for really, really good reason, and it's to help more people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic insight. Thank you so much for that. I can definitely see how, you know, engagement and lack of resources and, you know, just getting a stamp of approval, whether that's, you know, from someone higher up or the general public, I can see how that's challenging for sure. But stepping away from the challenges, what has been your most memorable or favorite memory in your time working in the nonprofit sector, or if you want to go with the organizations that you're in now, just enlighten us. What has been like just the most valuable, you know, precious moment to you?
You got it, April.
Oh, there's so many. I think the first time I was deployed for a disaster was, I mean, there have been like a few pivotal life-changing moments I've had. There's a woman named Marquita here locally who is a sickle cell patient, and I talked to her when she was 16 years old, and to this day, I actually have her name written above my door as someone who inspired me, because it made me realize like my hard days are nothing. She was a 16-year-old who was fighting just to be able to go to school. She was going to school from her hospital bed. She was getting complete blood exchanges every 6 to 8 weeks and had been for years. For reference, a blood exchange is where every ounce of blood from your body is replaced with donor blood. And she was going through that every 6 to 8 weeks. And the resilience she showed, again, was just, I'm getting goosebumps right now. It was just life-changing. The other moment was my first deployment. I was deployed to South Carolina after some pretty severe flooding in Columbia. And so for 2 weeks, I just completely disconnected from my role in blood and immersed myself in our disaster response. And to see what those how much commitment our volunteers have, first of all, was amazing. I mean, these are people who drop everything. They don't work for the Red Cross, but they drop everything to go to a disaster area for weeks at a time to help other people. And that is their motivation. That is their only motivation. To see the kind of impact that we had. I mean, you think something like whenever you see a Red Cross truck rolling through a neighborhood with hot meals, you're like, oh, whatever, it's a meal. How big of an impact is that? I saw people crying because that was the first hot meal they had had in like 4 days. And just seeing, once again, number one, my problems are not that big. Like there's nothing that I am dealing with on a day-to-day basis that touches either of those two extremes, health issues or losing your home, but also the generosity of the community. I mean, Nicole, you were talking about how people came out in force. There were people, I mean, neighbors helping neighbors muck out their homes, people who literally had nothing were like, I would like to donate. I have no house left, but I'm staying in the shelter. And I know that this costs money for you to take care of me, and I want to donate. And those are the kinds of things that, if you are not forever changed by that kind of an experience, I would want to talk to you, because those are really the things that are eye-opening and really kind of bring you back down to earth to say, like, number one, you are making an impact, but you also need to remember how fortunate you are to be able to make the impact that you are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Wow. It's incredible.
It's super powerful. And I mean, I can echo that in terms of just like once in a lifetime experiences that I've had with World Vision. More recently, we took Patricia Heaton. You remember her from Everybody Loves Raymond? Yep. We took her and Entertainment Tonight to Kenya to see our hunger response work. Basically, there's a hunger crisis in at least 20 countries around the world, but particularly in Kenya, what they're fighting against is climate change. The Ukraine war has like more than doubled food prices. So if you couldn't eat before, you really can't eat now because you can't afford it. So just this confluence of factors that is really impacting hunger, you know, and people are dying because they don't have enough food to eat. So we took Patricia Heaton to Kenya to see this work, to see our response work. And what that means is, you know, we take her to meet the communities. She kind of goes in, sits down, goes to the clinics that we work in to see exactly how we're helping fight malnutrition for babies. She, you know, literally went to church with the community. And that church service blew my mind because people showed up to church with offerings. Now, mind you, they don't have food to eat, right? They're living in, you know, straw huts that they built themselves. They're in a hunger crisis. They came to church with their offerings. That blew my mind. It blew Patricia Heaton's mind, so much so that she was moved to tears. And she said, you know, this is what it's about. You know, your sacrifice of offering and sacrifice of giving during your time of need, you know, it's just such an example to how we need to be. And, you know, I think of that often. And like you said, like the goosebumps and the tears and everything else. It's just, you know, and that's the kind of opportunity and experiences that this work will afford you. So,
wow, it's incredibly moving just to hear both of your experiences. You know, and it's so awesome too, being able to have these panel discussions where we talk about, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, you know, to really get a full scope. But wow, it just sounds like for both of you, your line of work is just incredible. Okay, so moving on a little less from, you know, industry scope. So for the students in this room who are really thinking about going into nonprofit, let's see, how can we best prepare ourselves to work in the nonprofit space, or what can we do throughout college to help prepare us for this line of work? And April, we'll start with you.
Let's see, that is not when so little spoiler for later on, I actually dropped 2 questions to our national communications team, including our chief marketing communications officer. So I've got some little nuggets for you later on.
Awesome.
I think, you know, looking at some of the feedback that they provided, and honestly, I think preparing yourself, understanding what kind of nonprofit work you may want to go into, learn everything you can about that industry. Go ahead and start looking at the reporters who are covering it, looking at the social conversation around that industry, around that organization. Learn everything you can about it, because that is going to help you. If you want to ultimately go into humanitarian disaster relief, I mean, even government organizations, FEMA, Georgia Emergency Management, following other organizations that are involved in the disaster relief space. Again, immerse yourself in it, because you are already going to emerge from college with that one added step. Also, try to get some experience. Even if it's just volunteering, but get some experience with media in particular. I think that will be very, very helpful, whether it's writing for your college newspaper or getting involved with a college, TV or any sort of social media. That's something that I personally, when I've hired younger professionals, that is something that I look for and something I do see as an advantage. Because you need to know the media landscape. You need to know how to communicate like a journalist, or like an influencer to a journalist or an influencer.
Mm-hmm.
So just really immersing yourself with the media and the industry, the type of nonprofit that you're wanting to go into.
Great idea.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. So when I was in journalism school, I would always, when I spoke to journalism students, both as a recovering reporter that I am, and a PR professional, I would always say internships rule. Just go out there, get your internship. If it's not paid, whatever, you're going to get the experience. And so for nonprofit PR, I would say volunteer. Get out there and see what interests you, number one. And then once you find something that, where your passion is, give it your time and your money. Give it just invest in kind of, seeing what it is that they do from the ground up,
Mm-hmm.
I would also say you can volunteer to help the PR teams. You guys have such a wealth of experience with social media that honestly, sometimes our older seasoned professionals, they may not have it. So just kind of helping them with a video, helping them with a TikTok, again, free, just kind of volunteer your time. That will help you develop relationships, further develop your network. And that network is going to help you get a job when you get out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just, be really creative with your time and offering up your time and your expertise, because you do have expertise.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to say, I have been so thoroughly impressed with the caliber of students that's coming out of universities these days. I think that the education really is doing you justice in terms of making sure that you're really well-rounded, or as well-rounded as you can be right off college. But I also think that there is this is such a old cranky person thing to say. There's you all have a hunger that I don't think my generation had. The PR students that I have talked to with, PRSSA Georgia at the annual conference, you truly have a real passion for this. And so many people have been really impressed. It's I've known I wanted to work in PR since I was 14 years old. I didn't know what PR was until I was 20. So I think that you use that to your advantage. You already have a leg up over a lot of other people likely in the industry already. So use that to your advantage, get that experience, volunteer with the PR teams, because we rely, in fact, our regional communicators, we have 50 regions across the country. Every single regional communications team has a volunteer public affairs team. And those are people who are video producers, photographers, writers, people who are expert storytellers, people who do spokesperson duties. Every single team has a volunteer public affairs team. So get plugged in with a nonprofit you love, because I promise you, they can use your help and expertise.
Awesome. That's fantastic advice. Thank you, ladies. So at this point, this is usually where I turn it over to Q&A, but before I do, So y'all may have realized that on the list of questions that you were sent, I've skipped around on that list. So April, I know you mentioned that you had reached out to some of your colleagues
Yeah.
about it. So I was just wondering if you would be willing to share some of their responses. And I'm sure they're questions I probably haven't asked yet,
Yeah.
but would you be willing to share?
Yeah, I'm going to try to summarize because I copied and pasted all of their responses and it's like 2.5 pages. I'm not going to do 2.5 pages of stuff. We are communicators, so we like to communicate, right?
Awesome.
So I think, for a nonprofit, knowing how to deliver within resource constraints, you will, even at the Red Cross, we still have a limited budget. As big as we are, we still have a limited PR budget. So making sure that you are able to be innovative. Nonprofits offer a lot of opportunity to be innovative with how you deliver your messages. And it's really because you have to be innovative. You have to be creative. You have to think about, how am I going to get this message out? How am I, when you got a person on Monday morning, that reporter is going to be getting 1,200 pitches to their mailbox. How do you set yourself apart? There's a lot of room to be creative. Relationship building, both learning how to lead by influence. So leading among your peers as well as up the funnel. That has been very invaluable. My first job was with a bunch of scientists. I was their first PR person they had ever had. The amount of leading by influence I had to do via fax machine was kind of incredible. It was an international organization. So that is truly a skill that will be so helpful to you. Learn about the relationship with your board. Every nonprofit has a board of directors. At the Red Cross, we have national boards and we have local boards. So understanding what role your board has, some of them take a very hands-on approach and are the ones who are telling you what to do. And you don't have a lot of flexibility to say, no, I'm not doing that. So making friends with the board, even when they can be a bit challenging, that was actually the board relationship with that first organization where they knew nothing about PR. Know how to effectively manage your relationships with corporate partners, whether they're a local business or a large national corporation. Knowing what is important to them and knowing how their donation to you can help them achieve their goals is also very important. Government relations, relationships with government officials is so important as well. Keep in mind, you need to understand some of the limitations they may have. A government official cannot be like, go donate to the Red Cross. There are regulations and laws that prevent them from doing that. So understanding how you can make it about the Red Cross or make it about your organization within the arena and the regulations that they have. Storytelling, this one came up so many times. Make sure you know how to tell a story. Not that you know how to write a news release. I mean, that's very important. Writing skills are severely lacking among a lot of PR pros. But make sure you know how to really tell a story. The recommendation, this actually came from our national social media director: take creative writing classes, join a Toastmasters group, freelance on your local newspaper, join a student media team, learn all of the fundamental components of the story, from the person, the focus, the visuals, everything. Know how to bring that story to life. From 5 different people was talking about generalists. When you're part of a nonprofit, you are going to need to be a generalist. You're going to need to know a little bit about everything, right down to the people you are working with, not PR, not marketing people, but the people who are cooking the corn in the back of the semi truck to make sure that truck going out into the community has the food for the people who need it. Know all parts of your organization, because it will come in handy. And if you ever need to do interviews, knowing that stuff like the back of your hand is going to take that stress level way down, because you know it, because you've seen it, even done it. Our media relations director, and this is actually something that I had jotted down too, so it was just nice to see her also reinforce this. Set boundaries. This is really, Nicole and I both have talked about the mission. When you're working for a nonprofit, you have to assume that you love the mission and you are committed to the mission, but you still need to think about your mental health. And it is very, very easy when you are working for an organization that you are passionate about to do the most, to go above and beyond every single day. Above and beyond is manageable for short periods. You can't do that every day. The times that I have considered leaving the Red Cross over the years was because I was putting in 15-hour days. And I had to set boundaries. I had to communicate those boundaries out to people, and I had to stick to them. And I got to tell you, it was tough because in the nonprofit sector, not a lot of people set boundaries. So if someone has their own boundary issues and suddenly you are setting them and sticking to yours, that might rub them wrong. But you got to do it for you, because you cannot be the best you and you cannot show up and do your best work if you were exhausted, no matter how much you love the mission. You got to take care of yourself and set those boundaries so you can continue to love the mission. Our chief marketing and communications officer said, at the end of the day, we are all storytellers. So rely on the basics of writing well, develop compelling messaging, forward-thinking digital engagement. So we have a lot of emphasis on digital first content. If we happen to get a great media story out of it, that's great, but it's digital first content. And you want to make sure that you are engaging your stakeholders where they are, whether that is another NGO, whether that is a government relations partner, whether that's a corporation, a policymaker, or an individual financial donor. You want to make sure that you are communicating to them how they want to be communicated with and where they are. Don't expect them to find you, because they're not going to find you unless they're, actively seeking because it's the middle of a disaster. Most of our donors are going to be coming through because we have helped fill a need for them that they may not have even realized they had, and we're going where they are.
That's all such fantastic advice. Wow. Thank you for sharing that, April. That's fantastic. Nicole, is there anything that you wanted to add before we open it up to the floor?
No, I think that was really comprehensive. I'm taking notes myself.
I mean, I wrote it all down, so I can send it to you.
Yeah, send it. That was awesome.
The wealth of knowledge. I love that. Awesome. Well, at this time, I'm going to open it up to the floor. So for the people on Zoom, you're welcome to type questions in the chat, and I will monitor that as best as I can. Anybody in the room interested in working in nonprofit? Come on up. All right, I'm sending Mr. Kamen your way. He's going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Hey, so quick question. So, when it comes to annual fundraising events, I personally work in a nonprofit myself, with the Boy Scouts of America. So what strategies and tactics do you usually review whenever you kind of, I guess, prep up for these really big fundraising events to grow your donors for future references? Because I don't know, I'm asking just because I have to do a script writing for one of our events next year, and my director asked me to kind of review the script before it goes out to the CEO so you can start prepping for the event. But I kind of want to hit all the areas to kind of I guess grow the target audience and grow our donations for this year.
Oh, those run of shows and scripts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicole, do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
I would love for you to. My team doesn't really handle that stuff.
Okay, so For kind of leading up to a fundraising event, first of all, we do have a fund development team. I was in fund development for, a few years. I realized that is not a facet of public relations that I enjoy. So I don't like fund development. But we do work with our fund development partners. So from a PR standpoint, we want to make sure that we are, leading up to it, communicating to people who have been donors in the past. If it's an ongoing event, you want to communicate to the people who've attended it in the past. You want to make sure that, I think looking at an event, what is the goal? Is the goal strictly, like I'm thinking Big Brothers, Big Sisters, we had a big bowling event. So the way we communicate that is going to be vastly different from how, and it was like $30 a person to participate. It's going to be vastly different from a very high price gala that costs, a few $100s for each person to attend. So the way you promote things and even your target audiences, once again, finding them where they are, that's going to be really important. For a fundraising event, I always really like, this is honestly with our fundraising events, we've had recognition events, we've had volunteer recognition events. I really like to try to put a spotlight on the mission, and try to incorporate ways to let people know that their funds are going to a great purpose, whether that is bringing in Boy Scouts of America, whether that's bringing in scouts as like special guests at a gala, or working with videographers in advance to have some video during the event, depending on what type of event it is. Just make sure that you are able to tell your story, because yes, it's fundraising. Is it a gala or some other sort of fundraiser? Would you mind me asking?
It's a peach of an athlete. So we're getting 10 college athletes from across the country, and just showing their stories and like what made them like passionate. So
Yeah.
it kind of like raises donations like towards the council itself, and also
Okay.
like for scholarship funds too for them.
Yeah. So in that case, first of all, that's fantastic because you're getting people, I assume the athletes have a Boy Scout connection.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. So you're getting that firsthand account from people who have a bit of a name to them to begin with. Whenever you are able to find people that others recognize who have a personal connection to your mission, that is going to be so valuable. You think about the social media influencers, but now you're thinking about those people who are actual influencers in their community. They live next door. They watch you play sports. They, for us, we look to community leaders as influencers. So again, helping them tell your story, I think, is a great start. But really, you want to evaluate a fundraising event just like you would any kind of PR campaign. You want to take a look at who your target audiences are. What is your primary objective? What are the strategies and tactics you're going to be using to help achieve those objectives? And at the event itself, don't miss the opportunity to reinforce your story. Don't miss that opportunity.
And then think about the event in terms of the PR chops that you can get from it, right? Like, so you should already have these stories of the athletes like in a little like miniature capsule that you can just send off to a reporter.
Oh yeah.
Like make it really easy for them to kind of pinch off whatever story that they want to tell from that event, like think like a reporter who would want to cover the event, and then think like a donor who's going to attend it. Like what's going to make me, give up more money?
Yeah.
And as a reporter, what's going to make me actually do this story?
Yeah. And that's so good because I'm going to use a gala as an example. No reporter cares about a gala. It is an event. There are galas happening all the time. What they may be willing to do is to tell the story of this person who is impacted by your organization and who is going to be a guest at the gala and speak on how, your organization has affected them. That's the story, not the gala. You can mention the gala in passing, but you need to still have that newsworthy element. If you send a news release to a media representative, it's like, come out to this event. They're going to put that in their deleted folder very quickly. But if you can give them that compelling newsworthy piece of the story that ties back to your fundraising event, you're going to have much, much better results.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good luck on the event.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.
Sounds awesome.
Awesome. Well, I know we only had time for really one question. So, Nicole, April, if you would be willing to, if you're willing to share like your LinkedIn or something where maybe our members could connect with you and, further, ask any questions that they may have, if you'd be willing to drop that in the chat, that would be wonderful. And no worries, if not, we get it, you're busy. So, okay, awesome. So if y'all could do that, that would be great. And then let's go ahead and prep for a picture in the room. Awesome. So April dropped her email there. Fantastic. So I know y'all probably
No vision, right? Yeah. Okay.
snapping pictures. Thank y'all so much.